In the 1970s, 10% of Africans lived on less than $1 a day. Today, over 70% of Africans live on less than $1 a day. This is after $1 trillion of aid money has gone to this continent. So we should be asking ourselves, why is it that with all the good intentions that we have, why is it that we're not seeing the improvement in growth and the reduction in poverty that we would like to see and that we expect to see from logic? We should be questioning the aid system. There's nothing racist about it. There's nothing that we should feel ashamed about when we question the manner in which we help people around the world. There are three things that I believe that we agree on. The first thing we agree on is that Africa should not be dependent on aid forever. It's not only not desirable, it's just not possible, it's not sustainable given the economic picture of the donors. They themselves are suffering from financial crises. The second point that, again, I believe we all agree on is that we need African governments to take a leadership role in this agenda. It is simply not good enough for Western governments to be concerned or Western individuals to be concerned, or indeed even for Africans on the ground alone to be concerned. We need African leaders to be at the forefront, leading the charge to attain long-term economic growth and to reduce poverty. The third thing I believe that we agree on, in the worst case scenarios, we know that aid has contributed to providing cash for corruption. But even in the best case scenarios, we are now in a situation where even good African governments are faced with so much aid that they are no longer doing their job. They have abdicated their responsibilities of providing public goods to their people. The current situation of policymaking across the African continent is a reflection, I believe, of the aid system itself, that African governments feel quite comfortable not saying anything. Nobody makes demands on them to say anything about what the plan is for long-term growth and economic development. But you know what? Somebody else is going to go and do it. As I said, we deserve better than that, and it's time to change that culture. The 1960s aid was really targeting large infrastructure projects. So this is really on the back of the success of the Marshall Plan, for example. 1970s was focused much more on poverty and growth, that linkage. 1980s was really about structure adjustment and stabilization programs. So a lot of the aid aid was going around those themes. The 1990s was really about governance and democracy. So a lot of the money that was targeting to Africa was really aid money that was supporting those type of projects. And now we're in kind of what I'd call in 2000s, what I'd call glamour aid. It's kind of become a bit of a free-for-all. There's not a big theme, but you have a slew of NGOs, running around the African continent, each with their own individual agendas, whether it's in healthcare or education or in security. And a lot of them very often are financed by private individuals or some of the bigger governments. I love Bono's music. I think he's a fantastic musician. What I worry about is that we've got to a point now where the celebrities are essentially defining Africa's policies, economic policies. The world is asking Africa to tolerate things that they don't tolerate themselves. The United States, Americans would never tolerate President Obama saying nothing about the financial crisis and allowing Madonna to go around and talk about why she thinks that a housing crisis in America has been a bad thing. In Britain, where the debt is now 60% of GDP and they have a deficit of 13%, British people would never allow the sitting prime minister to go quiet and allow Mick Jagger to go around on tour talking about why it's important for British people to curb their expenditure. But in Africa, when was the last time we saw an African leader telling us what the plan is with respect to economic development? So this begs the question, what kind of societies are we building in Africa? What kind of societies are we trying to create? And they are clearly very different from the societies that we see other places in the world. I mean, in the Netherlands and in other developed countries. Somebody's so shocked at that. In places like the Netherlands, your government and yourselves have a symbiotic relationship where the government knows that if they want to stay in office, they have to produce the public goods. And those public goods will be provided because you are getting taxed. And you're happy to get taxed as long as you have roads and you've got security, your kids can go to school and you get health care. In Africa, the position is opposite. Because African governments do not rely on an African tax base, they don't care about what Africans think. They care about what the donors think, and they spend most of their time courting and catering to the donors. This is at the heart of the problem. They don't care if Africans say, we've got bad roads. It doesn't matter, because it's okay not to provide roads or to provide education or healthcare or to see the poverty statistics increase across Africa, because they'll still be in office. Look at the number of African leaders that have been in office over 20 years. They get relaxed and we continue to give them aid money to support them. You have a situation where if you want to get rich in Africa, you have to be involved in the state. There's basically no private sector. The problem with this is that most public goods are provided by the international community, and that unfortunately does not seem to be changing. Things seem to be getting worse rather than better. Some people might be not surprised that this year alone in Africa we've had 4 coups. Some people would not be surprised that in the 1990s Africa had more civil unrest and more civil wars than the rest of the world put together. I would argue that because there is no private sector to speak of, and because the money pools at the state, you always have factions fighting to capture the state, because that's where the money is. It's no surprise, I believe, that looking at the World Bank Doing Business Around the World survey, year in and year out, African countries consistently are at the bottom of the list. Because I believe that aid also kills off entrepreneurship. Currently, in Africa, over 60% of the population is under the age of 24. We've got a very, very young population, and I know many of you in this room have been to Africa. You'll know what I'm talking about if you go to the big metropoles, places like Lagos or Kampala or Nairobi or Lusaka. You see lots and lots of young people selling T-shirts, CDs, cheap trinkets from China. Some of them have actually gone through up to 12 years of education, so they have basic reading, writing, and mathematics, but they have no job opportunities. This is a time bomb, because in another 10 years, not only will they be on the streets, but their children will also be on the streets with no job opportunities. So the ultimate point here is we have to create jobs. Otherwise, we will be littered with a situation like we see in the failed states, places like Somalia.